that God should raise the dead. Charles Haddon Spurgeon, a great preacher of yesteryear, said this, and I want to quote it to you. He said, everything God does is wonderful until we get used to it. When we become accustomed to the wonders of creation, we just say, well, that's natural, and we forget the Creator. But don't count God out when we're talking about the resurrection of the dead. A perplexing problem. How are the dead raised up, and with what body do they come? Now look, if you will, in verse 36. Paul answers that question. Thou fool, that which thou sowest is not quickened, except it die. And that which thou sowest not that body that shall be, but bare grain, it may chance of wheat, or some other grain. Now, Paul was a wonderful teacher, and so there's a perplexing problem, and then he gives a plain picture. A very plain picture, something we can see, something we all experience, and that is a seed that dies, it is buried, it rots, it decays, and yet out of that seed there comes new life. And God says that your resurrection body is very much like a seed. Now, we call death the grim reaper. Death is not the grim reaper, it is the sower. When you die, you're simply sowing a seed. You're putting a seed in the ground. Somebody says, I don't see how God can raise up a body. Be reasonable. Here's a man who's gone to Vietnam, and there he stepped on a landmine and lost his right leg. But he gets a fitting and comes back to this country and goes to work in New York in a mill, and there he loses 2 fingers. And they're disposed of in an incinerator somewhere. And then this man later on gets saved, and he's called to be a missionary. He's got a leg already in Vietnam and 2 fingers in New York, and he goes to Africa. And he dies in Africa, and they bury him there in a shallow grave by an apple tree. And that apple tree goes down and absorbs him and turns him into apples. And those apples fall on the ground, and a pig comes along and eats them. Now they say, tell me, how is God going to raise that man up? You see, God says very much like a seed. Very much like a seed. You put a seed in the ground. All the particles of that seed dissolve, and yet there's a kernel of life in that seed that doesn't die. Now you say, well, Pastor, wait a minute though. The analogy doesn't fit. Doesn't fit. I mean, a seed never really dies. I mean, the seed is not really dead. I mean, there's life in the seed, but when you die, you're dead. That's where you're wrong. Friend, there's a part of me that never dies. It's a part of me that never dies. Jesus said, he that lives and believeth in me shall what? Never die. There is that continuing life principle that never dies. And if God wants to bring back the particular particles of my body, he'll have no difficulty bringing me from wherever I'm dissolved if he wants to do it that way. Very frankly, I don't think he's going to, but you're looking at a man already that's made up of particles from all over the world. I'm made up of corn from Iowa and beef from Kansas and apples from Oregon and swamp cabbage from Florida. Listen, all of those things are already making me right now. But it is not the particular particles of my body that God is going to raise up. We're constantly getting new bodies. You don't have the same body you had several years ago. There's not a particle in your body that was in your body several years ago. Those molecules are being sloughed off, and new ones are coming on all the time. Question, are you the same person you were as a baby? Yes or no? You are the same person, but you're not the same person. What is your body the same body you had as a baby? Yes, but no. I read somewhere that in a lifetime a person consumes, are you ready for this, 50 tons of food. You look around, you can believe it, can't you? 50 tons of food in a lifetime. Why? Because we're constantly taking on new molecules, we're sloughing off old molecules, and yet there is a continuity that we call the body. In 1963, I think I saw the Mississippi River for the first time. I was going to San Francisco, and I was driving, and I drove across the Mississippi River. I drove across the bridge right here in Memphis, Tennessee. Never dreamed I would be a pastor in Memphis, Tennessee. I looked down at the Mississippi River, and I saw the Mississippi River. I could go down there today and look at that river today. Question, would I see the same river that I saw in 1963? Well, yes and no. It is the same river, but not one drop of water that was in it when I saw it then is in it now. But it is the same river. Now, what am I saying? Your body that God raises up is not necessarily the same particles that are in your body right now. Let me give you a key verse that helps understand all of this. Psalm 139 and verse 16. This talks about how God created your body. It's a wonderful verse. Psalm 139 verse 16. And by the way, it is a good verse to teach us that we ought not to abort little babies. Here's what it says. The psalmist is speaking to God, and he said, "Thine eyes did see my substance, yet being unperfect." That is, I'm not complete yet. "And in thy book all my members were written, which in continuance were fashioned, when as yet there were none of them." Before my hands, my feet, my eyes, my ears, my countenance, before they were, God had a book. Did you know that God has a book on me? Did you know there is a specific schematic for me?